This time I've got MP12 Sideswipe, Masterpiece Sideswipe, or Lambor. This is the Takara Tomy version, as there is no other version. I guess that's self-explanatory. I wanted to get this figure when they announced it because not only am I a big Sideswipe fan, but the Lamborghini Countach is still like one of my dream cars. I was a kid of the 80s, and this car is like prolific, and it's everywhere. It was everywhere. Like, that was the car of the 80s, in my opinion. So when they announced Masterpiece Sideswipe, I was all about it. Here's the box. Lamborghini's logo very prominent on there. They've got the license from Lamborghini with the official sticker there. A little hologram, which is also kind of feels like a little bit like a throwback to the 80s in and of itself. But that's the bottom of the box. This side, Lambor. Top, it's foil stamped Transformers Lamborghini Countach LP500S. So, I'm going to crack it open and take a closer look. Alright, so I just pulled them out of the package for the first time and took a good look, and seems like I've got a pretty good paint job on mine. It's a little dicey right there a little bit, but not bad. All in all, looks like it's pretty well done. There's a discrepancy in the paint color, though, where the clear plastic, the translucent plastic, is colored. You can kind of see it most notably right there, where the looks like I don't know, a little bit of brighter paint right there on the seam. It's a little more noticeable in person. It's not really showing up too well on the camera, but not a big deal. So far, so good. But I'm reminded why I love this car so much. I don't know. It's just an awesome design. I've always loved it. So very little, well, really no kibble to speak of. Everything's nice and svelte. So looking pretty good. There's a couple hinges right here, but you know, that's fine. So that's him. I just wanted to do a quick comparison with Deluxe Jazz from Generations. So perspective can be weird on these videos. So that's them lined up bumper to bumper, right? Sideswipe is definitely bigger. He's a bigger figure. That's fine. The reason I wanted to do this, though, is because I don't see a lot of comparison videos all the times in reviews. I don't see a lot of comparisons done, and I wanted to do more than a couple. So Deluxe Jazz is not a very big figure. If you have him, you know he's a little on the small side. So I seen some other reviews that said that, you know, it's surprising kind of how small he is, and yeah, I'd say it's surprising. It's a little more compact than I was expecting, especially when they announced it, certainly. My expectations have been kind of tempered a little bit with the different things I've seen for it, but not bad. One thing I didn't notice in the other videos, this is filled in. I thought that was a hole. It's not. It's spring-loaded little peg that pops up. So something interesting. So good paint job. Not great, but good. And just gonna transform him here.
All right, here he is in robot mode, and I really like this figure. He's got a good balance of detail and like posability and articulation. That's probably, I think, the most impressive part of Sideswipe so far for me, is that he strikes a pretty good balance. Sometimes you get figures, they'll have like the Beniltech figures, for instance, or the you know, the other figures like that. They are plenty detailed, but man, they, as far as like figures, playing with them and stuff, they kind of suck. Like they'll break on you and stuff. So this one, like, great detail. The vehicle mode is excellent, better than any of the Beniltec ones as far as I'm concerned. And great articulation, relatively simple transformation, fills in gaps in places. He's proportioned well. He looks like he's supposed to. He looks like G1 Sideswipe. So all that stuff they nail. And I really don't have too many complaints with him. Paint is a little bit uneven, and it's not going to show up too well in this video, just the way my setup is. It's my colors, like the bright red, looks brighter on this video than it does on the figure itself. This the red around his head, for instance. Try to do this. That's a much darker red. It's almost a burgundy, and then the rest of him is a little bit brighter. But he looks like he should. Nothing kind of out of place or weird about it. I think he's looking good. Articulation-wise, pretty basic, really. He has articulation in the right places, though, which is important. So how he's articulated and how well he can move and do his thing, not fantastic, but it's in the right places. For instance, single hinge knees, that's not great. I mean, double hinges is kind of where it's at. I don't think you need it, though. He does have a thigh swivel, which is important because that will get you the kind of more dynamic poses. It doesn't make him look so static. But if you like static, you can do that too. Make him stand like that. Like he came from the dollar store. And he is a transmorpher. But I don't like that, obviously. I don't think anybody really does. You can kind of get him into a kind of more dynamic, cool-looking pose. And his articulation lends to that pretty well. You can get him into some cool positions. Thanks in large part to these heel spurs, they fold up into the foot like this here, so it means that you can pretty much give him high heels, make him a girl. Now, what I mean to say is that with that little peg right there, you can kind of fold it in and give him a little more balance so he doesn't fall back. It's kind of a small thing, but it's significant. It ends up kind of adding up at the end of the day. And probably the best part is the fact that he has waist swivel. That goes a long way for me. I think that waist swivel gives you a much more dynamic looking figure, much more, just it's not so static and boring. You get that waist swivel going, and they kind of pop to life. And that's kind of been my experience with that. So I really appreciate the waist swivel. His cannon mounts on his shoulder. It goes on either shoulder. It's got a little articulation itself. You can move up and down, which helps, and get it out of his face. Also, very G1-esque. It's pretty tight. That this peg goes in these shoulder holes pretty tight. It's not exactly even easy to get it in, honestly, but it's possible. It's not too difficult, but it's not easy, that's for sure. So there's that. And I'm really happy with Sideswipe here. He's a really cool figure. So I want to gripe a little bit. Actually, wait, before I gripe. Do some size comparison. So we'll do the first Jazz, the Deluxe Jazz. And you can see they're both kind of squatted a little bit. They're splayed out and kind of posed. So they're not just standing side by side. But you can tell he's obviously bigger, much closer to a leader. A Voyager class figure. So in vehicle mode and robot mode, he's noticeably larger, more noticeable in robot mode. But it looks like this could be in scale as well. What I mean to say is if they made a masterpiece Bumblebee or something like that, and he was the size of Jazz, that would be a pretty good scale. So he fits in well if you have him displayed with your masterpiece figures or your deluxe figures, I think. The problem, though, this is where the belly aching comes in, is that I do like that he's in scale, right? So there he is with Grimlock and Prime. So he scales well. He looks like he should. Now, this is MP01, the 20th anniversary Prime. So he's bigger than the current like MP10 Prime, which is more closer to Grimlock's size. So him are the two ends of the spectrum for sizes of masterpiece figures. It's much more dramatic. Here, though, Sideswipe's more in scale. They look like they belong together. That's what they look like. Now, the problem is that he's not any cheaper than Grimlock was. Grimlock released it for $80, maybe 70 or 80, and he's 80. Now, granted, this is not a U.S. distributor. Hasbro's not doing this. It's Takara, so it's going to cost a little bit more. But because it's in scale, you end up paying the same price for a much smaller figure. I can do that as long as they're masterpiece figures and it kind of bears that quality. I'd prefer that they're in scale, even if it means getting a small figure. But the problem is that I can't imagine them paying or charging $80 or so for a Bumblebee figure, for instance. Bumblebee's smaller than him, like I say, probably be more about the size of Jazz here, or maybe even a little smaller. And I can't imagine paying $80, $50 for a figure that size. That's basically a deluxe size figure. And if they did make a masterpiece Bumblebee and he was in scale, he'd be a very small figure, and I'd be surprised if they would sell him for less than $50. And I think people would be off $50 would be exciting to have a masterpiece figure, but you're paying at that point $50 for what is a deluxe size figure essentially. So that's kind of like the problem with scale, and hopefully they can work it out, because I really like this Sideswipe, and I want more figures like this. If it were up to me, this would be like they could. I'm not a fan of all the multiple lines that Transformers does. I don't get the Legends class and the Scout class usually. It depends. If they're cool figures, I'll pick them up. But typically, I don't need that. I don't need bot shots. I don't need a million different toys with the Transformers license. It's the only license you'll find which you go down the toy aisle, and half the aisle is all Transformers stuff. A million different kinds of figures. If it were up to me, I'd say cut all that stuff out, just start making these, because this would be cool. If this was like the new Generations line, that'd be dope. But that's never going to happen, obviously. But having this figure kind of makes up for it a little bit. It kind of gives me that anyway. It kind of gives me a little taste of what that would be like. And I want more. I want Jazz. I want all of the Autobots, all of the car based Autobots and Decepticons. But man, I'm just kind of thinking about all the different possibilities now that Sideswipe came out as good as it is. He's good enough that it's kind of making me want Red Alert, and I wasn't going to get Red Alert. I don't know, we'll see. If I can find a good price on Red Alert, I might pick him up someday, but as of right now, I have no plans to pick him up, but this is a good figure. And his transformation is relatively simple. I gotta say, though, that these wheel wells you turn on his legs here, and it was pretty stiff. It was a little hairy for a minute. I hate that. I hate when things are especially tight and you don't want to bust something, because it starts to feel like the plastic maybe is giving. But if you're going to start transforming them, just pay a little more attention with the wheel wells here on the outside. His backpack is really small. It's really not even a backpack per se. Kind of sticks out a little bit there, but that's fine. No big deal there. It's nice that they have the windows fold in, so he keeps his profile and his waist. Like that. He's a really great looking figure. I'm really happy with him. I was a little, I don't know, I don't want to say surprised, but he's got a kind of a punum. I don't know, he's got kind of pouty lips. Sideswipe. What a handsome Transformer. I don't understand why they gave him that face. Jazz, he looks, come on now. He looks kind of mean. Anyway. Bring on the more masterpiece figures. If they can make these faster than they can crank out the big guys like Prime and I'm guessing Soundwave is probably going to be big. I got Soundwave on the way. I'm going to be picking up Soundwave. I'll be doing a review for that. I have a feeling I'm really going to like that figure. Soundwave is one of my favorite characters. I also got Ravage and I think it's Frenzy or Rumble, one of the two. I got that 2-pack coming also, so I'll be doing reviews for all those things because I really dig Masterpiece Transformers. I want them to kind of open the floodgates. If they can make these faster, then by all means do every Autobot and Decepticon from the G1 series. G1 first. I know people are fans of all the different things, but I want G1 figures from when I was a kid, and I want Masterpiece versions of them. That's what I want. I think a lot of people want that too. I know this wasn't a very in-depth review, the articulation and the blah, blah, blah. But I say that he's a damn solid figure and that you should get him. Just real quick, the gun, little peg in there, pegs in his hand to an extent. It's just a little peg there, but it holds it in place. His hands open up and they can be weird like that. This gun will peg in up here on that, so you can give him a crazy Machine Gun Joe McTurbo gun that will also go on the top of the car here in that little spot there. And it's kind of nice that you may not do that in vehicle mode. Put this in the top because that kind of looks wonky. I think when you have a Lamborghini with a giant cannon sticking off the top of it, but it's not so bad in robot mode. But I'll tell you, this little so that thing pivots there, which is nice. I appreciate that. But man, it makes it tough getting it into these spots here. There we go. You can kind of store it on his back. And then he's got his little deals here, the pile drivers. I can't remember if I showed these or not yet. But they're hollow, which I tripped off of. I didn't... Oh, there he goes. I didn't realize they were hollow. Not a big deal. I mean, it doesn't matter, essentially, but that's those. Goes on his hand, so he has little pile driver deals from the G1 show. A nice little extra. It's not going to set the world on fire, but I appreciate any little extras they want to throw in there. Sorry, I'm all over the place here, sorry. Okay, so that'll do it for me, I think. Oh, and just real quick, I kind of want to, just for shits and giggles, put him next to movie Sideswipe. Now, I like Sideswipe. I like him as a character. I typically don't like the movie-verse versions of characters. Some of them are pretty faithful, like Prime, for the most part, but Sideswipe was a little bastardized in that these two are not the same character. I don't know how you go from this to this, but that's the name of the game when it comes to the movie stuff. But I just thought it'd be fun to see these two next to each other because, man, incidentally, I do like this Sideswipe character though. He's kind of a badass in the movies, and I do like the figure too. I think it's a dope figure. Anyway, here he is, MP12 Takara Tomy Sideswipe, Masterpiece Sideswipe. Thanks for watching.